So this episode was a little bit of an accident. Not really. It was a pretty good idea, really, but I was unprepared. By unprepared, I mean I did not have any of my sound equipment with me, and it just kind of happened. We used my phone and a little microphone I have for the phone. It's not terrible. The sound's not terrible, but it's not going to be what you're used to for the quality. But it is, I think, a phenomenal interview. I had the chance to sit down and chat with Pastor George Borghardt. You may know his name from Higher Things, whether for good or for ill. I tend to think for good, generally speaking. I hope you will too after this interview. We talked about a whole mass of stuff. We talked about business management. We talked about dealing with reconciliation. We talked about the value of the liturgy. We went all over the place, even to the point of how to hack your Macintosh. I think they call that a Hackintosh. And what kind of things he likes to do in his spare time, like study the depths of outer space. Did you know that? Fantastic interview. Now, I want to say a wide-ranging conversation, but Tim Ferriss always says that, and I know I picked it up from him. The problem is, I just don't know how else to introduce a conversation that is, in fact, wide-ranging, that goes all over the place, that is fascinating as the day is long, I think, and in which you'll hear both George and myself get pretty heated. Not so much with each other, but with, well, the reason why you really ought to be a mad Christian these days. Please do enjoy. So I'm sitting down here with George Borghardt, and I know the sound for this episode is not going to be that great because I was silly and didn't bring my machinery with me. So we're just using my phone today. But George is a guy who has a pretty well-known name in Lutheran circles because of his work with an organization called Higher Things. And I'm at that Higher Things event, and he's given me an hour or so to chat with him, which is really, I think, extraordinary given how busy you are, George, at these things. So thank you for that. And I don't want to spend a lot of time at the start talking about, what is Higher Things. There's plenty of places people can go to find out what is Higher Things. You do conferences. They have hymns and liturgy in them. Pastors teach the kids. They're not as big as other conferences in terms of like the numbers, but you're not small either. You do retreats. Those are throughout the year. There's a magazine. There's a website. There's daily devotions. All sorts of great stuff. And there's places to find out about that. What I'm really curious about, at least to start off with here, and this is sort of like my own niche or my own pet hobby, is as a guy who kind of came into the organization, I don't know if you were a young pup.
I was a young pup.
Yeah, youngish, right?
Right.
And then moved through the organization, watched the organization as a startup of sorts, a nonprofit startup, develop into a truly functioning, policy-driven nonprofit, end up in the CEO role for several years, the president role for several years. What I really want to pick your brain about is not even necessarily Higher Things, but your own take on managing an organization while also managing. Well, you were an associate pastor initially somewhere, but then moving into the head pastor role and now doing so again. And just if you could start with that, because one of the things that bothers me about Missouri Synod pastors is that we can't manage our way out of a paper bag. And it's not all of us, but it's enough of us. And the seminaries are told, hey, do something about this. Like, okay, here's one course with a book by Rick Warren. And like, that doesn't fix anything.
Right.
So for yourself, just when did you realize as a young man, as a pastor, I gotta pay attention to this. I can't just let things fall apart. And then what's your kind of personal philosophy on that a little bit?
Well, so when I got involved in Higher Things, it was because Feuerhahn, I was called to be a youth pastor of a small congregation. And I was sort of wigged out that, am I going to be at Grandma Schmidt's bedside and be like, I'm sorry, I can't serve you communion because you're too old.
Because you're the youth pastor.
Right. Yeah. And so I was taking our kids as a registrant and then serving as a pastor. But I got more involved because my kids were young and I wanted the organization to be there when my kids were older. Because you really hit it. We aren't trained to be for leadership, management, and stuff like that. And what signaled me to step back and learn a little bit from the way the world does things was that I was given the job of running a conference, and the conference executive told me, the person who was my boss for running the conference, told me, the guy that was before me said I wouldn't last 6 months, and I'm about to resign. And so it was like, okay. And so it was very clear to me that if I did things the way that they had done things, that the whole thing would implode in upon itself, and I would end up sucking my thumb in the corner.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? And so, and it is true that most people think that pastors are this like Swiss Army knife, and they have all these skills, and we don't actually have leadership skills. And so, what I had to do was step back and resist the temptation to do everything, to bolster my weaknesses with people who had the skill set. So I'm a big idea guy, and there had to be people who implemented those ideas, and I had to trust those people. There was some leadership stuff that I sort of studied, but I really
I kind of want to jump on this. So, I mean, because you didn't just come up with that idea of recognizing your weaknesses and then supporting those weaknesses with the strength of other individuals. You had to find that somewhere. And so, what did you turn to?
Well, I think President Bush was the president then.
Okay.
And not renowned for being the sharpest tool in the...
Bush 2, right?
Bush 2.
Yeah.
Dude, I'm not that old. You just made me
keep
really
telling me
old.
I'm a young pup to you, so I don't know.
I remember you when you were at seminary. But no, what he did was he surrounded himself with people who would overcome his weaknesses. And I mean, when you're looking at the president of your country, that seems like a pretty good thing to do.
Sure.
And so people who were organized, who had specific skill sets, all of them around, and all I would provide would be, this is what the direction I think we should be going in the conference is, how do we get from point A to point Z? And I think the Lord was very merciful and gracious in the midst of that, in helping us do that. That's pretty funny. I didn't expect to be doing leadership stuff. We have to sort of resist the temptation of thinking that everything has to be done by us for it to be done properly, and understand that we have particular gifts and other people have particular gifts, and to trust that this is a body in Christ and that everybody has got different skills. And once you stop that sort of temptation as a pastor to manage everything, and then you can do amazing things. And so you want to make sure that you're checking on people and helping lead them, but not doing their stuff. It requires trust and faith that the Lord is going to carry this stuff through. And so that's how we went from a single conference to 2 conferences to 3 conferences to 5 conferences, and then I was no longer needed to be a conference person, and I was pushed into something else. And so that's it. But I think you've really keyed in on it, because I don't know how many guys get themselves into all sorts of trouble in parishes because they're in everything. Sometimes it's good for us to step back, trust that the Lord is going to do things, and just simply let the gifts that the Lord gives us in the laity around us do those things.
So yeah, there's at least 2 really good thoughts in there. I mean, you had a lot of good thoughts, but 2 things that come up and remind me of ideas or catchphrases that I've latched onto. One's called the 80-20 rule, which is the idea that 20% of the work is going to get you 80% of the results, and then the remaining 20% of the results you want to get, that's the other 80% of the work. And the more you can figure out, I'm okay with 80% on, say, the bulletin font, right?
Right.
Yeah. Then the better off you're going to be. You're going to open up a great deal amount of time. So that's part of that trust thing, and realize that the extra effort to be in control of everything isn't really netting you very much at the end of the day.
It's like it's a form of idolatry, probably.
Yeah. Well,
that's like
absolutely.
I'm a pastor, so I'm speaking theological terms, but it is like I have to do everything for everything to be done the way I want it to be. And that ends with us in the corner.
Strong leaders are going to have that as a gift too, in a sense, because you have a vision, right? You have an idea. Right. You want to see it come to pass. But then it's learning to also that your vision is not God. Your vision is not perfect. You are not God. And to bring anything to pass, you've got to rely on others. The other one, and I love this one, I come back to this one a lot, that you need to let small bad things happen in order to achieve great good things.
Oh, that's a really good expression.
Yeah. And so sometimes there's just that thing that's got to lose, and it's okay because you got a bigger deal going on. That's a Tim Ferriss one.
They in Higher Things, they think they're going to put it on my tombstone that I always run back to gift. This is going to be a gift. If something goes wrong, or we do something bad, or something we fall on our face, we believe in a God who makes all things new, and who is at work in our weaknesses and in our failures. And so it only takes a little bit for me to sort of step back and say, where's the gift going to be in this? What's the gift? And or how can we improve so that we don't do that again? And I think it's, again, my deal as a pastor is to speak in terms of the gospel. And so that's faith. He's gonna take the worst thing that could possibly happen, the cross, and save all of us. So he's going to take the worst mistake that we make in an organization and use it to teach us, in order to improve us, to refine us like fire, and make everything better. Or, whatever his will is.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Right.
We're free.
Sometimes he spits you out of the mouth.
Right.
But
we're done with this and we're on to something else.
But you don't even know it by the time that's happening. But you're right, though, to see. And so this brings up another question. This is one of those, the quick fire ones I forgot to bring with me, but I do remember this one. And it is, if you're willing to talk about, it doesn't have to be Higher Things related. It can be, life. The most important mistake or failure or thing that wouldn't normally be thought of as a gift that has happened in your life that in fact, without it, you wouldn't be able to be who you are, to do what you do, to serve how you serve today.
It's not a personal failure. The birth of my daughter. My daughter, super rare genetic disorder. Like, have you met my daughter? Oh, good. Yeah, I knew you had when you were in
McHenry.
Right. Yeah. Good. So my daughter is this bundle of fearfully and wonderfully made. And her existence and her life and her sustaining of life, gift from God, and just the fact that it wasn't what we expected, really rocked my whole sort of framework. If you'd have met me in seminary, I was a pretty sort of sarcastic, negative, cutting fella, but I would always sort of joke that nothing bad has ever happened to me. Nothing bad is ever going to happen to me. And I'm just going to sort of skirt through life like Jerry Seinfeld. Everything's going to be fine by me, but you're going to have some real problems. And here's the birth of my daughter, who was premature by about 5-6 weeks, born while I was what I thought was going to be the sort of crowning achievement of the 2 years of my work in Conroe. My first 2 years of being a youth guy was to go from no kids to 24 kids at Duluth.
Right.
And all I did in my first Higher Things conference was get off the bus, be puked on, take the kids to dinner, go to one service, and then my daughter was born, and I flew home.
Yeah.
And so here's my crowning moment where I got all these kids, and then the next thing, life happens, and you're like, is she going to live?
Yeah.
And she's in the hospital for 6 weeks the first time. And then they give her to us, and they're like, we wouldn't let you take her home, but you're a pastor and you're a responsible individual. And we're like, no, keep her.
Right.
No, this is above my pay grade.
Right.
Tell me about Jesus. I can do.
Yeah.
Take care of a sick child. I'm not sure. And they also said, there may be some sort of genetic anomaly. Like, just suck the air right out of the room.
Right.
And so the next year is spent in and out of the hospital, where I would be like driving down to Houston from about a 45-minute drive from Conroe, working in my mind her funeral sermon.
Yeah, sure.
You know what I mean? And that right there changed everything. When I realized that all of those expressions that we use in order to comfort people were a bunch of they're BS.
Platitudes.
You know what I mean?
Platitudes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and they don't deliver what they need to.
By the way, my most recent episode, I've just started saying bull poopy.
Oh, that'll work.
I don't care.
Please forgive me.
And,
Bull poopy from now on.
I like the other one, but like in public because I can't, right? But like forget it, it's bull poopy. And like it's so stupid. It's such a stupid word. Anyway.
They're going to have to forgive me for we were talking about.
No.
I mean, I was trying to be crass for crass sake on this one, and if you want to hang me, then hang me. But that put everything in perspective for me. Everything works out for good. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so her life works out for good. her the sort of, we were so ill prepared for our like questions when we find out about it. It was like, is she going to be able to have children? Is she going to live a normal life?
Right.
And they're like, if she lives a year,
Yeah, right.
and you know what I mean? And it just changed everything in my framework from, sort of, just believe it'll be okay. God works everything out to if she dies, that's going to be a gift. And if she lives, that's going to be a gift, because she never ever didn't have a savior.
Yeah.
Right after she was born, even though I wasn't there, the senior pastor, 3 squirts of a syringe, the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and she's a child of God. And so nothing that's going to happen in her life is ever going to happen apart from him, which means if he takes her, that's what's best for her. And if he doesn't take her, that's what's best for her at this time.
Yeah.
And there are no promises in this life, which makes you look at your other kids and you're like, there's no promises for you two either. The 2 healthy boys,
Yeah.
And then you're looking at everybody like there's no, I could be here tomorrow, and tomorrow you could be like, I always knew he was crazy. And, come preach at my funeral, Fisk.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then everything, now you're free.
Yeah.
You've been liberated from all the things that we think are important, because death is right there.
Yep.
And it lives in your house.
Yeah.
And so she's like fragile. You know what I mean? So she turned 17.
I didn't know she was that old now.
I know.
Wow.
Well, because she looks like she's
tiny.
Yeah, she looks like she's 5.
Yeah.
But here's this child of God who can't talk, who can barely walk, and is in constant pain, but has a super high tolerance for pain. And the best thing I've ever experienced is her communing, the first time. And Buto did that. He Pastor Buto, he became, I like to say that I was his associate because he pretty much ran me. But he came and we confirmed her.
Yeah.
Asked her questions. Do you believe in God? And it's not like we haven't had her in church and all that. Do you believe in God the Father Almighty? Touchdown. Yes, I do. Do you believe in his Son, Jesus Christ? Touchdown. Do you believe in the Holy Spirit? Her hands up is not a dry eye in the house.
Yeah, sure.
And then if everybody, after they recovered from that, eat the body and blood of Jesus. And there's this pause, and then on the iPad, Amen.
Oh, wow.
Booyah! You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that everything. So everything else is just sort of here today, gone tomorrow. The kids, if it turns out for them, great. If it doesn't, and the Lord calls them home, that's going to be okay too, because we have a Savior who saves us even when things are completely. I'll use broken just for giggles. She's a broken person, physically.
Yeah.
Like I think one day she woke up and couldn't walk. Just refused to walk. Now, there's no way to communicate to her. Why aren't you walking?
Right.
And we take her to the doctor, and they're like, oh, her hips are out of socket. Well, can you fix that? Well, no, that's been there the whole time.
Oh, my gosh.
And so some days she can, So it's like every day is gift for her.
Yeah.
Every day is a new day. And so as long as we have her, that's great. And that changes everything. It turns everything into positive and makes everything a gift. And now you understand me a little bit better, because that's the way I roll.
Sure.
So it makes everything make sense. I'm not here to make you a better person. I'm here to forgive you.
Yeah.
And that will enliven you to be a better person.
Yeah.
I'm not here to be your boss. I'm here to serve you for a wee bit while have time. And if the Lord takes that time away from us, that'll be okay too. I mean, your life is like that.
Yeah.
And then you were with us for a while, and then you're over. And so I don't know. Following you is like following
dude,
my JRT.
You'll like this and how kind of pathetic it is. At this Higher Things conference, I have high school age youth from 3 different congregations of youth groups that are my youth groups over the last 5 years. That's pathetic. Right? That's how quickly I bounced there for a little while. Hopefully that's I had a lot of learning that went through
That's the Lord, though. The Lord,
yeah, absolutely.
The Lord does
I got to see the guy here. His name's Redmeyer. He's the pastor that followed me up in Oaks in North Dakota. I'm there just a year. Had a really tough time. Get the kid a few calls. Like, okay, I want to go to this. And he's a ELCA colloquy who couldn't really find a place. He's a North Dakota native. He slips right into Oaks. His wife's from Oaks, and they're doing great in that congregation. And hearing about whatever I stirred up the way I stirred up in that year that it was there, it paved exactly what he needed at that moment. So that makes me happy to hear that.
So it's like that God loves you, and He's doing the thing for you, and He loves the people that you're and He loves the guy that comes after you.
Yeah.
Because we sort of have a self-centered view.
do.
It's like, I'm going to fix everything.
Yeah. No, we
do.
And
sometimes we're just John the Baptist.
The thing that's hit me in your story there, though, and the same lesson, I suppose, in some ways this year for me was the death of Aaron Wolf. I don't know if you remember hearing about that or know Aaron, but it really revolutionized my today is the day of salvation. Like, what am I waiting for? Why am I sitting still? What am I worried about? Kind of thing. And I am looking at my family differently as a result of that, my wife differently, and so forth. So that's a really great answer. It's kind of hard to segue back into, we
both have ADHD.
Management tools, right? But when we were talking about management earlier, and realizing that you needed more of an understanding of group dynamics, and I really am curious a little bit about what tools you guys use internally to manage things like the worship book creation over the course of time. Because that worship book's a pretty intense little project by itself for each of these conferences, and you do a really good job with it and have for a long time. I know Service Builder from CPH is decent. I mean, I'm assuming you guys make some use of that, but I'm less interested in like the printing tool, as in like the path that document, which is 200 pages, that thing takes from start to finish every year. I mean, that has to move through a lot of people's faces at some point, doesn't it?
Right. It begins with a committee. There's a worship coordinator. And our structure is changing a little bit, but I'm going to tell you how it goes now.
Sure.
So there's a worship coordinator, Rich Hines. He sits down and writes a draft of the readings in the lectionary and the first sort of, and he runs it through that committee, which is full of some pastors and some laity and a musician or two, and then they rework it and then they add the hymns in, and the hymns are working. They also try to take the hymns that we've done in the past conference hymns, and there's like a stack of them now, like 19.
Yeah.
And sort of sprinkle them through, and of course the last. We have some rubrics that the last hymn that we sing at the conference is next year's conference hymn.
Oh yeah, cool.
So like there's a little history there, and it runs through that. And the book, it needs a lot. There's a person who's got graphic design experience that takes the Service Builder stuff and actually makes it neat.
Yeah,
sure.
It's okay. It's a good starting point.
Right. Yeah. That's the best way to describe it.
And you get the rights to it once you have it.
once you CPH has been kind on that stuff, but and so they put together that, and that's really, really cool. I think that you sort of laid out a little bit of the hint of how things go when you were talking about sort of advanced planning. I heard a wise word of wisdom from one of my elders. Failure to plan is planning to fail.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's from somewhere in leadership theory. I've heard it before. Yeah, it's good though.
Fine. I just mock him every time I quote it. But anyway, so there's a lot of planning that goes on. And I think we did something this year that I was trying to do for 4 years, which was simultaneous conferences. I don't know if you know we did that.
Didn't you do that once before?
No, we had never done that before.
Okay.
And so we, because of the way that this summer works with the conventions and and other youth gatherings, we overlapped 2 conferences.
Okay.
One in Seward and one in Minnesota.
Okay.
I think it was one of the greatest sort of things that we've done, which required years of sort of adding staff and beginning to train people to get to the point where you can have a conference going on and then another conference going on a little bit later.
Yeah.
I think it went off really, really well, and we learned a little bit more. We won't probably do it again for a while, but we are capable of doing it, which allows a lot of the summer to open up. But a lot of all of this is just planning in advance and taking the time to give yourself enough time to do that. There's not a lot of room for procrastination when you're doing these things.
When you plan in advance as an organization, where do you put your plans? Google Documents, Dropbox, Evernote, Stitcher. Not Stitcher.
We use Dropbox. I'm out of operations now, man. So I sit on the top of Mount Olympus.
Sure, sure.
And that's of course pagan reference, but it's funny to think of myself as.
It's just the reason I ask is because the moving parts that are needed to make that kind of planning take place, I have yet to find, at least in my own experience, tools for more than one person to use that I find really to do the job. And so I care about that.
Yeah, they use Google Docs for some things, and they use they also will share docs across like Word shares and Word and Pages will do shares too.
Right.
I think that they with the worship book that we were talking about earlier, we get a draft of it, and then we sort of mark it up. And
Okay. So then pull it to the master plan, right? Which I would assume as the CEO has to kind of have in his own pocket somewhere, like the big picture drive.
Right.
Right. Where's that? Your head? It's not in your head. There's no way it's in your head.
Well, I mean, we've sort of expressed it in our mission. You know what I mean? I mean.
No, but I'm talking about the steps though too. So you're knowing that I threw this ball to this person. They got to catch it, run up, and throw it back to me later. I got to throw this ball over here, this ball over here, this ball over here. I got to take these 5 steps here, turn around and catch 5 balls. How do you remember that over a course of a year leading to 5 conferences?
Right. Well,
that's a ridiculous task.
Right. And I think that the conference staff has gotten really good at that. The coordinators have policy manuals in which they have to follow and checks that they have to do.
Checklists
that they have to do, and they've gotten it down to a science.
Okay.
This year with the 2 at the same time, it created some logistical complications. Like I was at the first one for 2 days, and then I like at the end of the day of the second day of the first conference, drove 8 hours to the next one. The next morning I was preaching the same sermon I preached the first day, and it created a week in which I was just like, what day is this again?
Right.
You know, but the 2 different coordinators were working simultaneously with the sort of recipe book for the conferences. The worship at every Higher Things conference is the same. And so that was one book.
Yeah.
And then they just added another section to the conference book with another, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So when you open the conference book, it's like all the conferences, but you can see that they're very similar. Their differences is only minor.
It sounds like so much of it then, and this doesn't apply directly to congregations, unfortunately, but because you have, you do have volunteer staff too, though. Your staff that are doing these things kind of have gotten to a point where they understand both the task and its needs and are committed to making it happen in such a way that the leader no longer has to watch them, right, to make it happen. And what I've also seen the organization do, which is really, really valuable and is enviable, is you also train from within replacements for those staff people. And so they're always keeping an eye out for others who can take it and go, who aren't having to learn ground up the entire everything.
Right, so
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, we because life is fragile and you never know whether someone's going to be with the Lord. It's just imperative that we continue to, and it's also good that a lot of people love the organization.
Sure,
there's more than enough.
Yeah,
but as president, one of my jobs is to sort of identify talent and sort of direct it.
Yeah,
to people. We want to get this person involved, and then we'll find the place where the puzzle piece fits and where they can do maximum good.
Yeah.
I usually make a joke. It's maximum bad for the devil, the world in our sinful flesh. And I think there's a lot of God there. In congregations, if we're going to switch to congregations.
That's kind of, because I want to go that way, and I'll give you a hat tip to where I want to go with it. Because something you said to me, I called you while I was contemplating the call for Rockford, and I think I caught you in an airport. And you had just recently taken a call somewhere else, and you talked about a number of good things, but you talked about I'm going to say it kind of the way I remember you saying it. I don't know if the context will need to be fleshed out more, but you said, maybe Fisk, you and I are just guys that need to go to congregations that aren't liturgical anymore, but maybe have some memory of it, and our job is just to bring them back, and then if we have to, we go do it again. And that struck me, not because people in Rockford I intend to leave anytime soon, but the idea of entering a congregation with an intent to change it, but in such a way that the change isn't going to be undone the moment you leave. But you want to inject something into their DNA in such a way that they're not never letting go again, kind of thing, right? So that's kind of the connection point of pinpointing leaders,
Right.
Finding the right tools for holding ideas, long-term plans. I think all that is part of the same question, the same.
So in an organization, it's mission and vision driven. I hate using those terms.
I know, me too.
I'm so sorry, but for us, it's daring youth to be Lutheran,
right?
Which doesn't mean daring them to be more Lutheran than you, or daring them to be super duper liturgical.
Right.
It means daring them to believe that salvation is by grace alone through faith in Jesus Christ, which is a message opposite of the world.
Right.
I think in congregations, mercenaries. Everything with you is ninjas. I think that Lutheranism is this amazing gift to the Christian church that its central thrust is the comfort of troubled consciences. When Lutherans cease to be that, they fall into being Augustinian, like Roman Catholics, scholastics, or fundamentalists. And so I think what we were talking about with that is this sort of desire, this sort of tugging to deliver the comfort of troubled consciences to people. You follow me? And to go to a place where that's not going on, and or hasn't gone on in a while, or a place that has had problems. You know what I mean? And bring that gospel to them. Jesus showing up in John 20, peace be with you.
Yeah.
When they're hiding behind the doors, they shouldn't be getting peace. They should, Walter would probably whack them with the law. You bad apostles, you. But I mean, the idea is here that, like I'll use the two congregations. Zion, the first call that I took after seminary, which was a congregation that had mini splits. And that was this thing that sort of was tugging on me. Lots of splits, lots of division. Hadn't agreed on anything in a while. They agreed the first time they called somebody, it was 51-50. Oh. And then the second time I was the 50. The next time when they called me, it was they were going to be in agreement. And so their agreement was, we're calling you. And congregation was sort of teetering on the edge of contemporary worship, and I just wanted them to hear the gospel and to hear their sins forgiven. Now we got to watch arrogance, but the Lord will tend to us in the parish that way. Follow me? Because this will break us, because this is crazy talk. This is parachuting into enemy territory with a knife. You know what I mean? This is the office where Michael gets himself left in the wilderness with nothing. You know what I mean? That's just crazy. This is crazy. All right? And I just wanted them to hear the gospel. I wanted them to receive peace. I wanted them to, and we saw that too. We saw amazing growth with very little sort of subtraction. But it was, I'm sorry, I'm fiddling and I'm messing up.
That's right. It's good.
Yeah, thanks, buddy.
You know.
The second call, which was to Immanuel in Bossier City, was a congregation who had same pastor for 48 years. Nobody wants to take that call.
No.
All right? Nobody wants to take that call. And I'm not saying that I'm just saying that any pastor who hears the guy has been there for 48 years goes, are you a stupid idiot? You know, and his picture is ginormous, Fisk.
When the DPs have like a whole section in their secret policy manual on like how bad situations this always is.
Right.
Here's the different things that will happen, and here's the ways you should deal with it, otherwise it gets worse. Like, it's happened that much.
Right? It's a life expectancy of 18 months for the guy going in. And I'm at 18 months.
Hey, all right. That's about when I again left mine. So it was 35 years where I went.
So what tugged on me there was a group of them that wanted to be Lutheran. They wanted the comfort of troubled consciences. They wanted the gospel. But his shadow. And I got to tell you, it's beautiful to have the same guy there for 48 years. For that congregation, you talk about stability and they're 50 years old and 48 years with the same guy.
Wow.
But when it's time for that changeover, that baton to be passed, the Lord has guys who don't really care that the shadow is long. You know what I mean? Whose ego is comfortable enough to say, yeah, you know, this is bigger than me. You know what I mean?
Take a few knocks. That hits on a little bit of one of my, again, frustrations, though, because it seems to me that good leadership, if I'm a good leader and I'm there 48 years, I have a plan for passing this thing on somehow. Like, the worst thing I can do to my legacy, if I really care about it as a legacy of troubled consciences being cared for, that kind of thing, is not have a way to extend that past my own leaving of it. And we seem to be like antibiotic level afraid of that kind of thinking. Forget even 48 years. I do something regularly as a pastor, and maybe it's too regular because I've taken too many calls. But I've never had it done for me, and I've heard people speak against it. I create a packet, an envelope of information for the next guy. I seal it and sign over the seal, and I say, for the next guy. And I give it to somebody who I trust in the congregation to give this to him. It'll include all sorts of stuff. Whatever I find information I find valuable. Things like, you know, this shut-in has these kinds of particular needs. And if you know this will really help you get to know her faster. All the way down to, look, I tried to do this, this, and this. None of that happened, but the seeds for this and this are here if you want, right? And we have nothing for this. Nothing. We're spiritually opposed to it. Because it's some mystical Holy Spirit thing, basically. We think the Spirit's just going to take care of it. And you're right in the sense that what you said earlier about gift, the Spirit will work through our idiocy. But I feel like we don't have to be idiots on purpose either, do we?
That's a new form of sort of thinking. I'd love to be in the next place after you to receive that envelope, because that would save a whole lot of time and mistakes.
I know.
Well, first of all, there's a bit of idolatry that we suffer from, that we were going to hold on to something for, and it's ours, and it can't work unless it's ours, and we have to be there. Or in a best construction sort of way, we just don't know anywhere else other than there. You follow me? We've been there for so long, and this is comfortable.
I see it as like teammates, though. I mean, if I come out of I'm not basketball for me is the game I play. I come out of a basketball game, I know I have to tell the guy coming in, you have number 53, right? You got to know. Otherwise, he gets in, he misses the play, we lose 2 points. So if we are in this thing together, it's not really about. And that's where it's like I always in the letter will try to say something like, "Look, I get it. Maybe you think I was doing the wrong thing. Fine, change it. You know, whatever. But I want you to know what the wrong thing was I was doing, so you can then change it, right?" So I get the idolatry thing, because we all have that. We all carry that. But what I don't get is our unwillingness to have the long view of these congregations as places being served by men in the train of the apostles, who should be kind of on the same team, right? In theory. Now, politics, all that, but
I think there's wise words of wisdom there. The deal is, they were Christians before we got there, and there will be Christians afterwards, which is the hard thing about change. Is I never would want my parishes to think that they weren't Christians beforehand.
Right.
Because that would bother me.
Yes.
And so they were.
Yeah.
This is what the Lord was doing in their midst. He's making a change. With the liturgical stuff, I just think that the liturgical stuff is marketing speaking. Like,
I know, it's so
if
silly.
everyone's having 40 days of purpose,
Maybe.
and you're having 40 days of Lent, you might stand up, stand out in the group. And when I at Zion, I was like, everybody's doing 40 days of purpose. And when I'm at the circuit meeting, I'm like, we're doing Lent. We had amazing amounts of growth because we were the only group that was doing doing stuff. And we were grabbing evangelicals that wanted substance. We were grabbing former Roman Catholics that were grabbing substance, that were wanting substance. At Immanuel, we're seeing growth in young families, because if Roseborough says that boomers are the cause of all the terrors in the church that we suffer from.
Yeah, what evils does not come out of the 60s?
Yeah,
all
right.
things.
So I'm quoting him so that no one gets mad at me. But my take on this is that if they were rebelling against liturgical worship when they were introducing contemporary stuff, then our generation and the generations that follow will be looking for some substance. And so for me, I think of it in terms of I believe that the liturgy is the best means of serving the means of grace.
Yeah.
The historic liturgy, not the only way, but the best way. It gets us out of the way. I also think it resonates with young families and younger folks, and so it's been helpful to me to sell it as that. Now, when it comes to passing on the torch to the next guy, I think there's a sort of piety amongst Missouri Synod guys. You called it a mysticism, that the divine call is so pure that we shouldn't sort of, our time ends and the other time begins. I don't believe that that's the way that I think we should learn a little bit from the world. And there's places in the scripture where the world is a little bit more wise. That parable of the dishonest, the unjust steward. Where the children of the world are a little bit more wise when it pertains to money than the children of men. You're sort of have given me a really good thing that I need to start planning for that, just for the sake of the gospel. Just for the sake of the gospel. That will change the way I sort of think about it. But
even like somehow it's like wrong for you to get there and then call the guy who was just there that just moved on and like chat every couple of weeks for a little while, because I mean, unless you're enemies, why wouldn't you? I mean, you don't want him to give like break the seal or something, right? I mean, no, of course not. But I have is a close personal thing with extended family, where I am so thankful that the pastor who followed their previous pastor is in constant contact with the previous pastor to know how to deal with a particularly unwell individual.
Sure.
I'm so grateful that they do that. But that's like faux pas somehow. Like
these are non-biblical laws.
Yeah, right.
So I have no problems calling the former seniors and asking them, hey, can you help me? Because usually that was a thing I learned from failure. Going into design and thinking, oh, you got all these divisions. We'll win you over with a lot of love and a smile, and no. So extraordinary amount of growth follows with the danger of schism, and at some point you reach out to folks, and I think that it'd be better to have learned that without the failure, but the failure helps. You follow me?
Yeah.
And so that makes failure a gift then. I think that there's a lot of mysticism around the call, which turns us all into enthusiasts. I don't think it has to be.
Yeah.
I think it's a pretty clear-cut thing. You're free in the gospel to take a call. You're free in the gospel not. God's going to love you if you take the call. He's going to love you if you're not. He's going to love them if you take the call. He's going to love your people if you're not. Which frees you to ask the people that you serve, "Hey, are we up? Are we in the right direction? Is it time for a change for you?"
Right.
And then the new people, are we free for a change for you?
Yeah.
And then what I've found is when they both agree.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or you hear something. There sounding square Mariah again, but like there's something that occurs where you hear, on one place and the same answer on the other, then that's the time to
So I call that gut instinct, and there's something good about that. I just don't think that's the Holy Spirit. I think that's the human creation.
Interesting.
And the Father's gifts to us, to be able to see, to think, to reason, to plan. And whether it is just pure gut or whether you actually are seeing a path and saying, look, this will work. I mean, I can hit this ball. I think there's something good in that. And again, I think that we should, as pastors, not have unbiblical laws, made up laws about how we shouldn't do these things. I want to touch on liturgy and then come back to law.
One last thing though, a lot of mysticism around the call protects us from feeling like we're hurting people's feelings when we leave, because we can always blame God for it. I think, but both of the calls I've taken, it was clear on both ends that it was time for me to do this work there.
I wonder how much of it is also us avoiding having to really reassess what our strengths and weaknesses are and ask,
Sorry.
Sorry, that's not as bad as the cat. To assess the strengths and weaknesses particularly and say, maybe I don't have the skill set needed for this here, right? This place. Whether that's because it's large or small or rural or city or whatever, it kind of the relying on the Spirit's promptings just lets me never have to have any self-reflection on my own, again, strengths, weaknesses, failures, abilities. And this, I think, harms us. And I think it harms pastors as they set themselves up for things to expect, in the way that mysticism always does, here's some promise I'm going to follow without an actual promise, and then it doesn't pan out the way I want, and it ends up causing pain I may not learn from, pain I may not see as a gift, and the cynicism that arises out of that. I've been a child of that cynicism too. I'm thankful it's currently not there, but I know it well. You call it liturgy the best way, and I want to just push back a tiny bit on this. I totally am like mostly with you. The thing about it, and the niche market stuff is absolutely spot on. It's insane that anybody who has the name Lutheran isn't trying to use liturgy right now, because we are so positioned to stand out in America against everybody. It's insane. And when authenticity matters more than being canned, then, well, you can't go pretend to be something else then, can you? You need to be who you are. But the reason I think the liturgy, if I'm going to use the phrase, is the best way, is because the liturgy is not as stagnant as everybody thinks it is. It is a body with a really solid skeleton and some good muscle, but it needs haircuts and it needs fingernail trims, and it's got to take a shower sometimes. And there's no reason that it can't actually regrow some things that aren't doing so well. But none of that is as fast as like building a brand new body, right? All of these things rely on that original host for being there. And the structure of this 2,100 year, not quite, 2,100 year old process of delivering the gifts, to think that we could ever just start from scratch and do it better is a grand hubris. So you can follow that if you want.
First, I need to recover from the liturgy taking a shower.
It's baptismal. Come on.
I was hoping that was where I ended. I would say, in a world where everything changes and everything is disposable, TVs only last a few years, monitors even less. This thing is going to be broken in no time.
Right.
I put it in my phone, my little idol. The liturgy provides some sort of grounding in a timelessness. I think it provides my latest rant is just a different culture. I'm jumping onto a sporting analogy. Okay, would you allow me to jump in?
Sure.
All right, so Cubs.
Baseball.
What's your team then?
It's basketball. Trailblazers.
Trailblazers?
I grew up in Portland.
Really? I wouldn't have called that.
Yeah, I follow them pretty hard.
So I'm not going to be able to do that because basketball is not my thing.
Cubs is fine.
So I'm going to do the Packers and the Vikings.
I have considered. My secretary has got me considering simply becoming a Packers fan, just because. So I'm thinking about that one.
That would really upset the people that you serve.
Not all of them.
I'm right on the border. Because we're close enough. It's like
I'm right on the border, man.
Right.
It's so there's a lot of Packer territory out there. So.
Right. I had the same with McHenry, where I would wear green in the season of Trinity, and they would be like, "Nice to be representing, Pastor." You could put a cheese on head on you get. When you're in the church, you're in the embassy of the Most High. Yeah. This is His turf. This is His home field. And it would seem out of control to go to Lambeau Field. I'll make the sign of the cross. because that's what they always do. Lambeau Field, this temple for the Packers, and import something different to it. So they're rivals, the Vikings. I love the folks in Chicago, but the Packers didn't really care about the Bears. They really care about the Vikings. And so if the Vikings fans went into Lambeau and they were like, look, it doesn't make us feel comfortable when you do your cheesehead stuff. So we would like you to pull for the Vikings while we're here.
Yeah, right.
And we're going to take this big, giant, annoying horn and blow it, skull. Every time we score, there'd be a revolt. You know what I mean? It would be out of control. Well, when you're in church, you're in the place of the Most High God. This is where he plants his flag. Flags are another story, but you know what I mean? This is where he is, and this is where his culture is. His language, his music, the way he speaks to us, he speaks, and then we hear his word, and we say back to him what he says to us. And so the idea that we're sort of going to import other elements into his world is like I would say, like, let's pull for the Vikings at Lambeau Field. So that they feel comfortable. You know what I mean? So my take on this is music and word that's part of that culture, where I can say to my people, the Lord be with you, and they immediately respond, and also with you, or with thy spirit. Lift up your hearts. We lift them up to the Lord. Let us give thanks. That is part of the culture. If I could sing, when I sing to them, they sing back to me. Singing doesn't go on anywhere except in the shower. Or in your car. That's true. You're loud in your car where everybody sounds like Beyonce. But singing doesn't go on anywhere. Have you ever sung to somebody in the hospital?
Yes, absolutely.
The nurses think that you are like
crazy.
You're the one that needs to be committed. Even if it's Christmas Eve and all the doors are open and they think, oh come, Emmanuel. The nurse walks in, it's like, yikes, freak, and walks and runs out, and it gets deathly silent, because here is where God is invading a different place. But not in the church. Singing is alive and well in the church. Chanting is alive and well. Singing and making music to our hearts to the Lord, as we love one another, Ephesians 5 stuff. And so the way I was sort of, that's the thing I've been sort of thinking about lately is, like, we understand sports in America. We understand cheers. I can go through all the LSU cheers and all the LSU chants, except where the students sing some bad things that end up on ESPN. But I can go through and I can teach. I've taught my kids them. That's my idolatry, LSU.
Sure.
But
I'm raising Blazers fans. Who've never lived or been near Portland.
God be praised. Keeping like 10 fans of the Blazers alive and well.
They made the Western Conference Finals this year. Anyway, keep going.
All right, anyway. But in the church, we've got this culture. As soon as we realize that this is a different culture, it could change everything. And you're right, we are poised. So the other churches are trying to figure out how to do liturgy without any sort of... I had a brother who was I want to say he refused to define himself, to identify himself. I think he was emergent, but he wouldn't, you know what I mean?
He wouldn't even let that label
he was
stand?
like, contemporary is not the way I,
right.
I was like, are you emergent? Because your church is basically a coffee house. Come on, be honest with me. Why don't can you confide in me? And he wouldn't. But he was like, hey, I was wondering, what's this incense thing and how do I do it? What's this ashes thing and how do I do it? And what ended up happening is he would just take these elements, rip them out of the place where they are, and throw them into the things. It's
jarring.
Right. But we, in the Lutheran Church, have it all out. A whole rhythm of worship, a whole season, a whole time, normal time, and time to learn about what Jesus did. Seasons, Advent, Christmas, Epiphany, Lent, Easter. We have all of this, and it's been handed down to us. And I think and with this generation, it resonates with the way back when. So that what I've seen is we're doing the liturgy, and folks come, that's what I remember when I was growing up. Every church I've been to since then, it's been sort of different. It's nice to come home. To the place, the home field of your team. And your team is JC. You know what I mean? Christ and Him crucified. So I think it's a great, like you said, it's a great time. It's good to be liturgical at this time because
if you can stand, but a lot of guys still don't stand. If you were a sports team, if you were a business, doesn't matter, whatever the analogy is you want, and you decided to start placating the competition, you would not have a team for very long. You would not have a business for very long. It just wouldn't happen. That's what we've been doing as Synod. Granted, you got a demographic issue, which has impacted us significantly. But even if it hadn't, we have spent 30 or 40 years trying really hard to empty our pews. And so we're positioned well if we can remember, and those of us who do remember. But at the same time, as a body, I think we're still pretty unhealthy in this, and it worries me. But that's my idolatry. I think too big about the bigs.
It's a lie. I think we've bought into a lie. We've done it with youth ministry. That youth ministry has to be the cool guy with the guitar, with the cool hair, with the jeans, and he's relevant and he's sitting on a bar stool. I don't know. I'm not really cool, and I shut down and I can't handle it. We've done it with the liturgy too. We have to sort of make it sort of. I heard an interesting condemnation of what we're doing, and it was you're trying to force a culture from the 1500s on children.
Yeah, right.
To which the response that popped in my head immediately is, that has to be better than the 1950s. It just has to be better than the 1950s and 60s. But it's not the 1500s.
No.
It's all the way back.
Yep.
And I'm telling you, it gives these Gen Z,
whatever,
iGen, whatever they are.
Yeah.
They dig this.
Yeah,
I don't know. Dig isn't the word. It's a 70s word.
No, but when they get into it, they go whole hog, and that's not the right way to say it either.
Spider-Man. I saw Spider-Man recently, the new one.
Yeah.
And Aunt May's wearing bell bottoms, so 70s is coming back. I expect Dig to be back in it.
Okay.
All right. I was like, is that bell bottoms? Oh my goodness. We've sort of bought this lie that they want something because we think they want it when we're not listening to them, when they want and crave something that has a little bit more permanence. Mm-hmm. You said it was sort of arrogant presumption to sort of change the thing. There's so much Word of God in that liturgy.
Yeah.
Thank God for LSP, which puts all the references on the side so the peeps can see it and they can know. So now it's not that the structure doesn't work. It's that the Word of God doesn't work. And then we have to tweak it and change it and make it better. I think what you meant by showering is that we can't just, I was going to use the term we can't do this half-heartedly. We can't just sort of throw in the towel. We have to. We have to. Before I play softball, I like to hit at the batting cages the night before, day before, just so that we have to sort of get it.
Well,
we have to be
that's
ready.
A whole different issue. That's what I think. Yeah. In terms of
practice the chant,
performance of it is a whole nother issue. What I'm getting at is that I do not believe it's finished. But it's not something that needs to be started over. And the difference, what has happened is we've said it's not any good. We need entirely new. And what I think is instead is we have the shoulders of giants. We should stand on them, but that doesn't mean don't walk. And so there are times and places for the new hymns would just be like a really simple example of this, right? You can't have a hymnal last forever. Otherwise, no one gets to write hymns. And you're telling all the poets and all the musicians they can never write hymns. I mean, that's silly. So there's room for growth. That doesn't mean you're going in and you're messing with the most ancient pieces. The Lord be with you, also with you, going back to Ruth for Pete's sake. Why would you change that ever, right? Which we then went and did at one point, right? And with you, it used to be with your spirit. But anyhow,
I think with that spirit's making a comeback.
Yeah, it is.
We seem to have a problem in the Missouri Synod of trailing failure 30 years afterwards.
I know it.
It's maddening.
It doesn't matter how much the people who are doing it are the most fond of saying it too. It's really weird. It's like, no, well then let's stop now. Like let's look right now and speak now and move on now and stop trying to be then.
I've reached the point in my old age that the non-biblical laws of things that I would like have to fall away. 2 examples. I was so happy in McHenry when I reached the point in which the people didn't have a bulletin. They just had this like insert thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, ta-da! You know what I mean? And then I walked in and there was a couple and they were clearly lost. They were off the street. They were, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
They were Gentiles.
Yeah.
all right, and they were lost. And at that point, I realized this liturgy thing is not, this culture is different, and we need to make it as easy as possible for them to do it. And so then I started printing out the bulletin in its entirety. And so that because the liturgy isn't easy.
Yeah,
what I lost with that is I wanted the hymnal to be a prayer book. I wanted, you know what I mean? I wanted these things, but I would prefer Sunday morning to be a no-brainer, because if I'm concentrating on what I'm supposed to do next, I'm losing the moment. The most comical thing, and then the sort of most ridiculously anachronistic thing that has occurred in my life recently is that screens are in Immanuel. So if you ever come to Immanuel, we have screens.
Lucky you.
But wait.
You can use them just
with
as hard.
historic liturgy on them.
Yeah, good.
It's just, but they may not last. We'll see. They're here today. But however we can make the thing easier.
Yeah.
Like you said, there is a place for new hymns to be coming in. There does need to be a new hymnal every generation. Yeah. As long as we keep, what does Luther say? Please don't. Please have mercy on the people and not change the creed in the Lord's Prayer.
Right.
We can get on Pope some other day about it, but please have mercy on them and don't change the creed in the Lord's Prayer. Have pity on them, he says.
Yeah.
You know, and don't tweak words that are so hymns and music can change, settings can change, but if we start messing with the words and the creed, we start getting into some trouble. Like that's the difference between being under the law with those things.
It's recognizing where the heart and the body is versus, again, where the fingernails are. And you have to have some knowledge of the body to be able to do that. So if you don't know anything about the liturgy, you shouldn't touch it. So I want to take us further directions here.
One last thing.
Yeah.
Because I'm gonna get on my
screens.
grumpy part. I'm sorry, man. I have screens. It makes me smile every time I see the Introit on them.
That's good.
People chanting off a screen makes me laugh.
Yeah.
That's just of the things I'm worried about is what, as long as we make the liturgy easy. But it's not enough to say this is what we've always done and that's what makes it good.
Yeah, right.
That does not work.
Right.
All right. So what I tell folks is, look, you should be able to stop me at any time and say, why are you doing that?
Yeah.
Why did you just drop a knee? Why did you just cross yourself? Why are you holding your hands this way? And I should be able to tell you, and there's two good reasons for it. One, Scripture. Two, I'm teaching people. I'm teaching you. I'm teaching children. And usually it's good to point. It's good to sort of point to the kids because they're the ones that pick it up the best.
They benefit from the rituals so much. It's amazing.
When we instituted chanting at Immanuel, I had learned from my previous experience that just saying that it's in the hymnal wasn't enough. You know, like the old guy, bless his heart, was like, I've never been to a Lutheran church that had chanting. Well, where two Lutheran churches have you been to? This one. Okay. Well, like it's not Lutheran. And then you open up TLH and it's like, may be chanted, is chanted. And I showed it to him and he was like, yeah, I've never been to a Lutheran church. I'm like, this is in the hymnal that fell from heaven before. It has to be children. We have to look at those kids and say, how are we going to teach them the faith?
Yeah.
And so what I said was, first I pointed out the misconception. It's not Roman Catholic to chant. It's Lutheran. Luther added most of the chants in order to slow the priest down. Listen how fast I talk as I say slow the priest down.
That's right.
But also for the sake of the kids. And so I told the congregation, bear with me. I'll chant the verba for 6 months.
See how long it takes.
Let's watch the kids. And then I started getting videos sent to me of the kid at the table coloring our Lord Jesus Christ on the night when he was betrayed, took bread. Or the confirmants that are like when they're ready to say the words of institution back, can we chant them? And so I think that we're being lazy, not cutting our nails, not combing our hair. If we just say this is the way it's supposed to be done, or this is the way it's always done, we need to sort of say two reasons. One, it's the Word of God, the gospel, the delivery of the forgiveness of sins. Two, I'm trying to teach the faith. All right.
It's not ex opera operata.
Now we can leave the liturgy.
You have to understand it. No, it's a great topic. My argument against screens largely comes down to they are less efficient and more work on a number of levels are more costly as well. That's a different thing, but they can be used. They could be used.
I think
to do them really well though, you'd need to be. It'd take a lot of time. Like imagine having like liturgical art color to the season with the stories that didn't look like a screen. The screen was so high quality that you walked in and there was a new painting on the wall this week, and it's the gospel lesson for the day. And then that's where the liturgy showed up a little later. Cool. Like, that's a full-time job, right?
Right.
Pulling that off. Anyhow, I know we're at an hour now, and I got 2 directions I want to go.
We got plenty of time.
I want to give you a chance to talk about this because I think it's also one of my I don't know what your actual position is in terms of how you feel about the conversation, but I can't stand this conversation in the LCMS and online right now. I think it's misguided. I think that there are some realities that are problems in American churches and American Lutheran churches and the LCMS that are in fact antinomian.
Oh, this. I wonder where you were going.
But I do not believe for a moment that the real threat to Christianity in and among Christians themselves of goodwill and good faith is the grand danger of real or soft antinomianism. I do believe that the law is misunderstood, underappreciated, caricatured even a little bit. Not a little bit, a lot. I think that when most people talk about the law, and even those who advocate the third use of the law, they don't actually mean the law most of the time. They just mean like the 6th commandment. And that's kind of a lot of what they mean. And there's so much more to this. So I'm not against, I mean, anyone who's listened to the show and has done regularly or listens to me preach, I don't hold back, man. I'm at the point now, dude, I'm calling you out as a congregation. Like this week, we were doing this, and the way this happened, it's not good. Look, Paul says so right here. You're going to devour each other if you keep doing this. Like, come on. And I don't whitewash that, but Jesus saved you, so it's okay. Like immediately, no, we'll get to the gospel, but we're going to let the law be the law here. So don't tell me I'm the antinomian. But you've been accused of it. You've been accused of it. And I don't know whether it's been fair or unfair how the treatment has been, but I have had personal conversations with you in which I'm convinced you believe in the law. You think the law is a good thing. And so I want to give you this opportunity to make that case. Because unless you've changed your mind and you actually have embraced full-bore antinomianism, in which case make that case, go for it. But I don't buy this charade right now.
It's the Seinfeld episode. I'm out there, Jerry, and I'm loving every minute of it. I think that first, let's make a clear confession.
Yeah, sure.
The law's good.
Yeah.
It's got 3 uses. Curb, which contains sin. Thank God for the military and the police and everybody who contains sin. Keeps God's natural law, sort of, and checks those sort of criminals. Second use, where it accuses. Mm-hmm. Okay. And third use, where as a Christian, it guides us to love and serve our neighbor. Okay. The gospel has freed us from the law, which means it's freed us from the condemnation of the law. The law is good for our neighbor. Mm-hmm. Now we're not meriting favor with the law. We're sort of loving and serving our neighbor. How else are we going to know to love and care for our neighbor than the law? And so Luther has us read the 10 Commandments every morning. In the morning, which is interesting, but not at night, because you can't sleep if you've read the law. Yeah. But in the morning, he has us read the commandments so that we know how to love and serve our neighbor. Yeah. The one who really needs us to do the law during the day is our neighbor.
Yeah.
You know? And so the solid declaration, we taught the solid declaration. I think this was last year.
Sure.
The kids and I went through the solid declaration on the third use of the law, and we learned it.
Yeah.
And it was, I thought we had a lot of fun, and the kids loved it.
It's great.
When you use that language of the solid declaration, it's very, very clear. If we were on the other side of heaven, we wouldn't need the law. We would be, you know what I mean?
We wouldn't need to be told it.
Right. We would just
be it.
Yeah.
It's like beautiful.
Yeah. But we're not, and so we need God's law Our new man takes God's law and it forces and it compels and it pushes down on our old Adam, drowning it, so that we can love and serve our neighbor. It's good for us. The idea that the sort of law is a bad thing is a caricature itself. The law is a good thing. The law is a gift. There's a gift language. Because I need the law, one, to call me to repentance, and two, to teach me how to love you. If I'm like not being instructed by the law, then I'm just going to love you like I think I want to love you, which isn't going to be, it's going to be sinful.
Loving yourself.
Yeah. And so a lot of this is just, what was your word for it? Bull
poopy.
Thank you. So
you got to say it like you're going to say that like, that's bull poopy.
Right.
They sound so stupid.
That's bat poop crazy. That's the way I normally say it.
Bat poop crazy.
Yeah, so that's bat poop crazy. So I think what we have is a sort of a rumbling. This began for me I want to say it's 2008. Actually, it was before then.
So right around there.
So like 2005, I write some reflections for HT, and someone just rips them, and it was just so odd to me because they would condemn me for something that was taken care of in the next paragraph.
Yeah, right.
But it was like like if you've ever gotten, this is an internet phenomenon where you step into an argument that's already going on and you have no idea that you've stepped into an argument, and I need a shield, please, because I'm being hit with vegetables and fruit that I didn't even know they had fruit. You know, where did they get that from? That was the first sort of sign of it. But in like 2008, one of these guys called me, and his take on it was, "Why are you you seem to be stumbling over yourself to forgive people." That's my problem with Higher Things, is you guys are always seeming to stumble over each other to forgive people, and like. My reaction was the same one as yours. What? And I'm waiting for the problem in this. Yeah, you know what I mean? And
isn't that what we were saying?
Yeah, that's what we were called to do, weren't we? Have you read John? Forgive sins. And he goes, no, you're doing it in more and more sort of hyperbolic ways. And I'm like, well, there's a big sins that we need to sort of, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't know how the forgiveness of the ungodly cannot be hyperbolic.
Right. Well, Paul uses the word when he says the hyperbolic mystery that's been hidden for all ages, which is that God saves Gentiles. Nice. I
love that. Yeah. Good.
And so that was my first sort of clue. And I got off the phone with the guy. One, I'm glad that he called me.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But two, that wasn't resolved because this is just not why I became Lutheran. You know what I mean? I was Roman Catholic, and then I was an agnostic. You always got to give God an opportunity to be God. You know, at least I was neutral. I was Switzerland in the whole thing. You know, the Baptists sort of grabbed me for a wee bit, but they didn't have the gospel. There was always some sort of laws to it. So they told me the gospel once, and then they held it back, and then I didn't hear the gospel again until I stumbled into a Lutheran church in Louisiana, which is there's like about as common as Mormon and Jehovah's Witnesses in Louisiana.
Yeah.
And so, but when the gospel came clear, it rocked everything.
Yeah.
And changed everything. Here was free forgiveness. Free in the sense of, for me, not by works, but not free for Jesus. He died.
Yeah.
And so the conversation didn't resolve itself. And I think it's been rumbling in Lutheranism between some folks that want, I think they want to pull back on the gospel.
That's what it feels like to me.
Yeah, I think. I
don't want to accuse them of that, but it's just what it feels like.
To accuse them would be to give them a law, and you're not supposed to be doing that. You.
But no, I don't want to be
antinomian.
unjust. I don't want to be unjust. And I don't want to. I got a worse construction on that in some ways. I don't want to believe that or do that either, but I don't understand why we'd be upset that the gospel's too loud. I get it. If somebody is over there abusing the gospel to do evil, we should say the evil you're doing is wrong. You've not believed the gospel, actually, at the point you're doing that. You've rejected the gospel and made it your platform for licentiousness. But that ain't the gospel's fault.
But notice that the conversation we've already moved away from the scriptures.
Because
the first use of despising the gospel is to try to save yourself. If salvation is by any law, then Christ died in vain.
Yeah.
So the first despising the gospel is not Bonhoeffer that grace has become cheap. The despising of the gospel is you try to rescue yourself from it. You try to pull yourself out of it. I think we need to go hard to the paint in the gospel. How's that? There's a basketball expression.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
That's the answer to this now.
It's always the answer.
My give a poop meter's on 0 with this. All right.
Yeah.
So, and I mean that in the nicest way, because I've defended it.
Sure.
I've defended the third use of the law. We've confessed the third use of the law, and it's not enough. And I was reminded of it recently, of that conversation with one of my biggest detractors. I actually went to go see one of them, it was nothing that we were doing that was not biblical. It was that we weren't doing enough for him. But this other one was a different guy, and when I remembered the story, because my memory is so jacked up, it made me just, I'm done. We're going to preach the gospel to those who are troubled, and that's Lutheran. You follow me? And if you need to be called out for your sins, I'm going to do that. Because I can't preach the gospel without telling you the law first, or else you have no idea what you need. But checking off a box, I'm just not going to do.
No.
And turning Lutheranism into some sort of scholastic exercise where I've got to make sure that everything is protected against isn't Lutheran. When you can't read the Galatians commentary by Dr. Luther without denying it, you're not Lutheran. You can see that I'm on 0 on this. You follow me? When you have to say, oh, no, that's not right. That's just Luther. No, you're not Lutheran. He's like, vomiting the gospel there.
Right.
And you're like, I can't handle that because it just, people could sin. Well, okay, look, if they sin, it's not making Christ a minister of sin.
No.
It's because they're sinners.
Yeah.
And then the law can come in and do its thing. Second and third use. Get that sort of that wild, crazy beast under control. Drown him again so that he can live his life in confession and absolution. But becoming somebody who changes somebody's behavior and makes them a better person is not my calling. I will make you I will not make you. The Spirit will make you a forgiven person.
Yeah.
You follow me?
Yeah.
And my job is to forgive sins and to retain them when I have to. But the idea that somehow Lutheranism has become this exercise where we're right. You follow me?
I do.
And I didn't sign up for that.
No.
All right.
No.
When we start talking as Lutherans with that the justification isn't the source and norm of all our doctrine.
Yeah.
I don't care if you're a professor at the greatest seminary in the planet and you have written 1,000 books, you aren't being a Lutheran then. All right? When justification is just another book on the shelf next to sanctification, baptism, and all those other things, when it's not the whole shelf, you might be a redneck, you might not be a Lutheran. You follow me?
Yeah.
If you want to get away from the 4U because it's too gospelly good for you and move to something else, awesome sauce. You're just not being a Lutheran at this moment. You know what I mean?
I do.
And that's awesome for you.
Yeah.
That's great. But please don't tell me that Lutheranism is about being right, or that the source of all doctrine or the article upon which the church stands or falls is whatever we're arguing about at this time. That's not what I signed up for. That's not the vows I took.
Yeah.
All right?
Yeah.
If I want that, I can go back to Rome. They'll take me back too, and I can stay married and all that jazz.
Yeah, right.
It's like they got bling, you know. But that's that. Where else am I supposed to go? Right now, I'm allowed to preach the gospel.
So,
You wanted to rile me up. It didn't with the liturgy.
Did.
It didn't with leadership. But with the gospel, you'll get me going.
I'm really with you on this. I don't care that much about the word Lutheran anymore. So that's where the thing I would change most in everything you're saying is it's not Christian.
Okay, that's fine.
It's not Christian.
It's not evangelical.
If you don't like the gospel, I mean, and when I say it's not Christian, I don't mean that every individual doesn't have a felicitous inconsistency, right?
Right.
But the position when you hear the words of Jesus about him forgiving you being spoken, and your first thought is, we need to stop that. I just don't know what to do about that as a Christian, right? So it's like, well, your fear is that the goats who don't believe it might keep being goats, and you'd see it. So what you're going to do is you're going to starve the sheep so that you can maybe work more at dressing the goats up to look like sheep by giving them the thing that they could pretend to do and almost accomplish but never really internalize, and yet, especially because they can't internalize, it won't save them. It won't regenerate them. Whereas the only thing that will save them and regenerate them is the absolute free gift. And I'm actually on this, take it a little bit more too. You know, you might disagree with me on this one. I don't think we should even start with, I know that the central article is the gift, right? That is what it all stands or falls on. We just was waving at you. What it all stands and falls on. But I'm convinced that the gospel is even more like folly than that. It's he is risen. And it includes the gift just in that. Because he is risen isn't about you at all. It doesn't make any sense.
Extranos.
It's completely outside of you. And you look at Acts, and the book of Acts, and everything that is said in that book by an apostle, and whatever they say, they're getting to he is risen. The whole time, every conversation, every proclamation, he is risen, to the resurrection of Jesus. They even leave out the cross a few times, and they get straight to the resurrection. I don't think that means the cross isn't there, or we shouldn't preach the cross. But I'm convinced that the Spirit comes through the folly of just letting this free proclamation that he's not dead go. Just let it go. And this antinomian debate is a total distraction from this. We're sitting here in this little intra-school, big kid in a small pond playground fight over who gets to really set the tone for what? The Missouri Synod? Why do we care about that? Sorry, Missouri Synod. I don't care, right? Have you watched? Do you see where we are right now? What's happening to Western civilization, to the world Christianity? And we're going to sit here and argue about whether or not a youth group is antinomian? You got to be kidding me. And at the same time, this is why it matters to me more. Okay, what matters to me here is that the gospel gets me going too. Right?
We're both going.
But what I can't stand is while you're going to sit there and debate antinomianism and the 30th of the law and how important it is, because you're trapped in the conversation the world's having about marriage is the only thing you think is immoral anymore, which it still is, but it's not the only thing. You're ignoring a million other first article realities that are in fact the law of God designed into nature that you don't want to talk about because they're going to accuse and kill you because you're not even curbed by them a little bit. And things like time management is one of them. Things like nutrition and health, mental wellness of pastors, non-cynicism, money management, all of these things from organizations to individuals are completely ignored and treated like we have nothing to say about them, and it's okay if we don't even care about them because we got, well, what they would say because we got the gospel. That's antinomianism to me, not I'm preaching the gospel to everybody because it's true. It's when you say, I've got Jesus, so I don't even have to worry about my finances. I'm fine. He'll take care of it. It's okay. Or I'm a pastor, and I maybe do have really high blood pressure, and I'm only 35 years old. But whatever. God loves me. Well, do you have kids, man? Like, do you have a parish? Are you gonna even like at least maybe acknowledge that is against the law? Right? Whether it's the fourth commandment, organization, whether it's the fifth commandment, the gift of the body, right? Whether it's, I'll go further with this. For Pete's sake, our people aren't coming to church every week. The third commandment is pretty dang important. Second commandment, the use of God's name. I am convinced, I can't get anyone to agree with me on this one, I'm convinced that most of what we call prayer and the prayers of the church and the way it's used in our congregations is blasphemy. It is white magic looking for temporal healings and nothing more. And that's how we see it. And these posts on Facebook about, oh my goodness, this thing happened. Everyone in the world pray for me right now. There's a pious Christian somewhere in there. But do they forget that God hears them if they just open their mouth? And that you're not going to strong arm God? So that's a breaking. There's so much law that we're ignoring. And this is what I'll get into. I mean,
Well, first,
I've gotten into other places with the so my listeners know what I'm mad about.
Your model trains off the tracks, man.
Sorry, man.
So a couple of things there.
Let the reader
I
understand.
love you. What I love about your He is risen thing is who's risen.
Yeah.
All right. So what I love is the Easter morning gospel from Mark's gospel. You seek Jesus the crucified. That's like his tag. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The crucified. So the gospel is that the guy who died rose.
Yeah.
All right?
Yeah.
So we preach Jesus crucified also mean we preach Jesus alive.
Yeah.
The first article things, I love that. I hadn't thought about that. You've given me a lot to sort of chew on.
The biggest issue, I'm just going to interrupt it. The biggest issue is that we are arguing about the third use because we've rejected the first article, and we're stuck in this corner with personalities running the argument rather than dealing with the bat poo that is going on out there that our people are actually dealing with. And I'll throw my state just legalized pot. Okay? My state legalized pot.
Illinois legalized pot?
Most progressive pot laws in the nation January 1st. Okay, it's coming January 1st. What am I supposed to tell people now that it's not illegal? You can't have an altered state of mind? Well, there's a number of things we do as Lutherans that cause altered states of mind, so that doesn't quite work by itself. Maybe there is a case for the kind of altered state of mind that exists in marijuana is one that we really shouldn't do as Christians. Sure, fine, right. But we're not talking about that. We haven't talked about it. We're unprepared for what's coming. That's one of a million things that's coming down this culture's pike.
So we have this tunnel vision which pertains to an issue which isn't possibly a real issue or isn't as prevalent as we think it is because of the water we've been drinking in the same state or in the same locale. So when I hear that the greatest danger in the church right now is antinomianism, I was like, you need to get out of the state that you're in. You need to stop drinking the water that you're drinking because pot, obesity, divorce.
Yeah.
But more than that, not comforted in my sins.
Yeah.
I'm still worried. I'm not comforted in my sins does not mean I'm like, hey, I can do anything I want, libertarian. No, this means I'm still troubled in my sins.
Yeah.
So more for me, not so much the first article stuff is you're focusing on this one little thing that you think because you don't like the way somebody preaches, or they don't preach like you, or you think that maybe somebody could go off the rails if they heard the gospel. But I'm sorry. I wrote an article one time that said kids are free once they read the Ten Commandments to do anything. They can go to college. They can go. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? The Ten Commandments. Sure. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So they
Luther said it.
You can't.
He said the first commandment.
You can't. You can't go and striptease, but you can be a rocket scientist if you want. You can be you know what I mean? And the response was, if you tell kids they can do anything, they'll fornicate. No. That's a problem for you. They don't need the gospel to fornicate. They can do that all by themselves.
Yeah, right.
And if they did that as a Christian, it's not Christ's fault. It's their fault. Again, now the law can be applied.
Yeah.
But this is a tunnel vision and a focus that we think that this is the biggest problem because we because of the locale, the zip code that we're sitting in, we're sitting around, drinking beer, thinking that that's the big deal. When, if we really got out, we would find that identity has become a problem for young people. Yeah. That our youth, the defining thing about their generation is how diverse they are, which doesn't mean that they love everybody. It means that they allow LGBTQ and all that jazz. Which, again, let's not pick one sin and magnify it. My problem is it's keeping us from preaching the gospel. Mm-hmm. All right, so it's probably both. It's the law. We're not preaching the law because we're so worried about checking the box, and we're not preaching the gospel because we're afraid of it. The gospel's a messy thing, said Dr. Nagel. Deal with it. Somebody was about to go east, and he said, because there's no order in the Missouri Synod.
Yeah,
There's all
right,
this stuff.
right.
And his response was, the gospel's messy. The law's nice and crisp. The gospel's messy. Deal with it. The guy was brought back and he stayed Lutheran. So I think it's probably a law gospel thing entirely. Because whenever our focus is off of the suffering and death of Jesus, it's on something else. And that other thing may be a good thing.
Right? That's a first article thing must be
Right.
a good thing.
Right, there you go. You got it. And so the other thing may be a good thing. But if it's not Jesus crucified and risen from the dead, it's going to do no good. The confessions say that the law, I just tapped the desk, but the law doesn't produce good works. That's not its office.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you want good works, you need to be enlivened by the forgiveness of sins. You want a dangerous Christian, you have a forgiven Christian.
Yeah.
All right? Somebody who's burdened by the law is in chains more than Scrooge could ever have. You want a free person, a dangerous person, you forgive their sins.
You want a crazy person.
Yeah.
That's what you want.
That poop crazy.
Yeah.
All right, and so I've reached the point where that is an isolated thing which is distracting us.
Yeah.
It gets you hits on your website, a lot of likes, a lot of shares. But whenever our eyes are taken off the gospel to any other thing, abortion, drugs, or whatever, off the gospel, we're losing our first love.
Yeah.
But you're also right. As we're so focused on that, we don't have an answer. I'm sitting here thinking, what's my answer to the marijuana issue? I don't know. Because it would be good to sleep. It would help people sleep. It'd be better than Ambien.
What about not smoking it? What about as it's legalized, it starts to be something that actually is, here, eat this brownie, and you, cancer patient, will have less pain. I mean, am I really going to say that's wrong? But I can give them something Big Pharma makes? A little pill that also has like weird side effects with it? I mean, I don't expect the Missouri Synod to like powwow and have the full scientific answer to all this.
The CTCR is probably working on it.
I'm sure.
Wink.
I'm sure. So it's not that I want that, but I just think that's just one of many examples in my mind of how we are distracted. We are distracted by a fake argument that allows our personalities or our egos to be suited or petted, and we don't see the armies unfurling their banners around the ark. And so as a result, our backs are turned to them, nor do we have in our hands the weapon we should be using most, which is the pure and unadulterated gospel.
That's true.
So it's shield of faith, gospel, sword, right?
Yeah.
And
I like what you said because it's a call to repentance.
Yeah.
But I love that the answer is the gospel.
It has to be, man.
For an evangelical, and that means gospel Christian, which is also known as a Lutheran for me.
Right.
But that answer is always going to be the gospel.
Yeah.
But as long as our eyes are taken off of justification by grace through faith, we're not going to have the answers to these questions.
Travel over land and sea.
But when you think that the greatest problem is one of three things: antinomianism, LGBTQ, or abortion, you've lost because. But I think it might be helpful.
Thing in there, but yeah,
there's a bunch of things in there. You know what I mean? But you've lost the ability to converse about the things which are actually meaningful for the people.
Right. Why am I pro-life? I'm pro-life because I believe Jesus is risen from the dead. Why do I believe marriage is what it is? Because I believe that Jesus is risen from the dead. Any stance I take on this, even in a public argument with somebody, I'm going to go straight toward, you're crazy. Why do you hate homosexuals? I don't hate homosexuals. I believe Jesus is risen from the dead. What do you mean? Oh, well, let me tell you about it.
Right. Let me tell you about this life-changing
thing. And then now he's got these words. I believe those words.
Because justification defines everything that we see, everything we do.
And if I want the homosexual to convert, it's not going to be because I tell him to stop being a homosexual or how he's better remediate his life. It's going to be because he learns that Jesus is risen from the dead. Right? Now, with abortion, you got an interesting side effect here in that abortion advocates and or practitioners, when confronted with what they're actually doing, do have a tendency to... They have wake-up moments that are caused by the law with the darkness of what they've done. I would hate to have that happen in such a way that they didn't have the gospel right there. Yeah, so I'm fully with you on this. We're having your staff show up, and so I know I'm really taking you past your time.
No, you're fine.
But I have one more direction I want to go with this, and this may be the most uncomfortable yet. So again,
How could you get more
punt on
uncomfortable
this.
than antinomianism?
You can punt on this because we've kind of touched around it a little bit, and we may have more of it in need after, who knows if we stir up more strife. But I think George, that you personally, in my viewing of you or watching you as a pastor on the roster, have had to deal with about as much personal conflict with other pastors as anybody I know. Maybe outside of people don't know it as much, but Brian Wolfmuller gets a lot of hate too. I mean, he's a lot of guys that really don't like him. I don't get it, and maybe I do too. I just don't know. I'm too ignorant. But you've had a lot of it come your way, and I don't want to get into any of it specifically. I want to just ask you about, as a guy who cares about self-management, learning, liturgy, the law, and the gospel. How have you grown? How have you navigated? What's our problem as the Missouri Synod that we just have a knack for letting our personalities run away with the issues? And I mean, it's not as though you don't have a knack for letting your personality get involved in things. I mean, there's that too, right? But I know from your own, again, sharing that it's not as though you aren't driving to people's houses to talk to them, right?
Right.
So I don't know. Wherever you want to go
So
on that, but
I think that
I think you got wisdom.
well, I have a lot to repent of. I picked fights when I was younger just for the sake of. I realized somewhere in, I don't remember what year it was. It was when I got a little older, that sometimes I picked fights thinking that I was defending the gospel, but I was really just, scratching a fun itch.
Yeah,
who doesn't
sure.
like to tussle and wrestle? If you don't know kung fu, then you can type on a keyboard. And so there's a lot to repent of, and I have apologized to some guys that I have been offensive to. I think that there's a change that occurred. I just thought that, okay, am I trying to create division, or am I trying to bring unity? And that sort of changed. Sort of changed the way I was thinking about things, which is why I'm always sort of saying, hey, can I come out and talk to you? Mm-hmm. Can I sit down and talk with you? Because I think the internet is the awfulest form of arguing. It indulges all of our sinful natures, and it gets us all in places where we shouldn't be. We don't have to answer every single complaint. And nor do we have to. We can be free enough to let the other person have the last argument. And also, I've reached the point in my life where if I've said what I've said, and I think it's clear, I can say I don't really need to answer you anymore.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Sure.
But I think that if we're trying to sort of create unity, and this is different from the way I just sounded when I was losing my stuffing over the gospel. See, the gospel's something to fight for.
Yeah, and it should create unity in it.
Right.
And
or just division.
It will divide those who despise it. This is true.
So, I'm not the best person at managing the conflict, but I'm trying to be better about it. To diffuse arguments by saying, "Hey, I'm going to come out and talk to you," because I can. I'll take the free time to do it. You're worth it. Other times, I think to myself, "There's a person that's easy. Guy's in Denmark. I don't need to be arguing with him."
Right.
Or I'll make a call. I'll let somebody call me, and I'll say, "You have 20 minutes. After that, you're taking time from the person that I love most in the world." You know what I mean? And so it's just sort of the priorities have to be sort of in order, or else the whole thing is sort of consumed.
Well, because it's different when you're a public figure, because now it's not just a couple of people in a chat room. You are, if anytime you put something public, radio, video, you're free game to the world. And so, like, to try to reconcile and or have a conversation with all, we are LCMS, so it's not all 7 billion, 8 billion, right? But it's like, honestly, there's probably 60, 70, 80, 90, 100,000 people out there that could come across your stuff and just decide they don't like this line from this thing you did 8 years ago.
Right.
And then they want to argue with you about it, and you're like,
Yeah, I was
I was
in a
busy
journal as an
today.
antinomian. In one journal, it was like a footnote in a journal from an article that I had written 8-10 years ago. And I read I dusted off the article, and the next paragraph took care of there's so he condemns me for something, and it's in the next. I just think that as long as our eyes are off the gospel, then we're susceptible to these things. When it comes to higher things, I've reached the point in my life that I believe that we're an organization that is about the gospel, the delivery of the gospel to the kids, supporting the parents and the pastors in that gospel being heard in the ears of the kids. And so it's just a thing that I've started saying is like, why don't you come to the conference?
Right.
And if you're not going to come to the conference, then that tells me something about whether or not I'm going to ever win you over. And once you come to the conference, if your complaints are, well, the person didn't hold his hands right, or the kids didn't kneel, then I think that the majority of Christianity is going to understand that your spiritual gift is that you're a punk. And so, and God can love you for it. God has you use of punks.
So I mean, I'm not in disagreeing with you that at a certain point you just have to let someone who's going to be mincing words, basically, in the argument, you have to let them go. The trick is how, I think, and this goes back to the public figure thing, how do we strive to make that point without calling them a punk publicly, right? And simply say that this is mincing words. I mean, the apostle calls people idiots too at various places. Jude particularly gets really heated at a few moments. And so there is that. I meant Paul when I said the apostle. But I don't know. Because striving for unity, I'm with you on this, and I really, because when I'm mad about the side argument over antinomianism,
right,
and I'm yelling about what's going on in the world, I want a unified army, man.
One of the things that, that's the deal. That's two things. I think to myself, look, and I've said this before, when the Visigoths come over the hills,
yeah, dude,
and they're brandishing their weapons, they're not going to care whether or not I'm a soft or a hard antinomian, and you're a guy who holds his hands right with the bottom thumb under the left thumb under the right thumb. They're not going to care. They're just going to kill us all.
Yeah.
And so these things are sort of ridiculous. We're surrounded by people who hate us for the sake of the gospel, and so these petty disputes are not. They shouldn't be lasting, and I spend a lot of time going to different groups and trying to sort of reconcile some of these things. If a group can be reconciled, that's great. If they can't be, that's okay. And one of the things I actually really like the freedom of the gospel for is because Higher Things is not about. I'm going to speak about Higher Things because that's. Higher Things is not a political organization. It's a youth organization for kids, so we don't have to play politics. We don't need to play politics. We don't need to make sure we say something in a way that's going to be offensive to this people. You know what I mean? We're free, all right. So we're free to sort of be around anyone who's about the gospel. You follow me? That's a liberating thing.
I don't understand why you have to be a youth organization to take that point of view.
Because everyone is. So many organizations in our little cult. Have forgotten what they're about.
It'd be so interesting.
Liturgical organization, which is nominating someone, a magazine which is worried about politics. I can't be your friend because you know what's great about being a youth organization? You recognize youth behavior. So
that does make sense.
I can be friends with you as long as you're not friends with them.
Are we a cult or are we just still in high school?
I think that sin. I used to tell the kids. And adults, sin makes us all act like children. And so we're regressing to teenage sort of thing. I can't be friends with you if you're friends with that person. Yeah, whatever. You know what I mean?
There's a lot of that,
There's no difference between that and we told them to stop casting out demons in your name because they weren't one of us. They didn't have the triple cross like us, JC. And again, what are we about? We're about the gospel. We, as pastors, need to be about the comfort of troubled consciences. If we can reach, it is enough to reach a unity on that, and the pure preaching of the gospel and the right administration of the sacraments. That is a big hurdle to overcome.
Big win, and we don't have that right now at all.
And so what I sort of there's a lot of freedom. You know what helped me most? Twitter.
How?
Okay.
You're the only person in the world to ever say that.
Well, no, what I mean by that is when Roseburg calls them the alt Lutherans, they did some awful things about me. I saw a picture of me and my dog, and my dog's never done any. Well, he's a bad dog, but he's never done anything to Lutheranism. All right, and like the caption was, "This is the poster child of what's wrong in the Missouri Synod." That became so absurd that it became liberating.
Yeah, sure.
I don't need your approval. In fact, seeking your approval is going to get me damned. All right. There's that Holy Week gospel where they believed in Jesus, but they love the glory which comes from men more than God. So they liked Twitter followers more than they loved Jesus. So they stuck with Jesus. Right after that is Nick at Night. He comes up and he's like, "Oh, Jesus, your YouTube channel is #1 and everybody digs you." Nobody's watching me, right?
Yeah,
it's
right.
night. And then Jesus' response is, "You must be born from above." Which, it doesn't fit the thing, you know? Because it's Jesus, like, I see through it. He doesn't entrust himself to men because he knows what's going on with them.
Yeah.
So the liberating thing is, okay, so we're going to be about the gospel. That's what my church is going to be about. That's what the organization that I'm about is. We're about to be the gospel in the ears of sinners. All right? And if we can reach some sort of coalition on that, that's great. But
this is my point, though. That's what reconciliation is or should be. And the reason we have this thing called synod is to be in coalition on that. And if we can't have that even be the main argument we're having about having a coalition that believes the gospel is a certain thing, which in that sense the antinomian debate is important because effectively they're saying, possibly, well, we have a different gospel, right? Then that's a valuable conversation. But to have unity, we must have that conversation. And it ain't going to happen on Twitter. It's not going to happen on Facebook. It's not going to happen with personalities driving the cart.
Remember that Walther said that we have the synod to support missionaries and the universities. And we don't support missionaries, and we don't support universities.
I know it.
Okay.
I've been on that one for a while.
So, I don't know. I don't really know why we have synod.
Hey.
All I know is that we on paper agree with what we say, and it's not nice being.
I like the health plan. That's about it. No, that's not about it. I like the fellowship with guys who I do agree with, and I bounce around. I mean, I get this thing about you can't be friends with this guy or else. I see that, and I just ignore it, and I try really hard to bounce between groups and break molds. So I come to higher things and. I never put on a clerical unless I absolutely have to. And I go somewhere where nobody wears clericals. I want a clerical, man. I walk in and I try to break every mold, and then so that visually they judge me immediately. And then I go and try to break the stereotype of what they think I'm going to be by being the opposite as I talk to them. So that I can try to get us to talk to each other as a synod about all this stuff, right? To have that unity be something we're pursuing. And I honestly don't believe that the guys that are anti-liturgy want to be in the same church body as me or you. I don't think they've admitted that yet. I know we kind of have had those conversations on other sides. That's a different thing. But pursuing that unity and reconciling is part of it. Humility is a huge part of it. Having the gospel center is a huge part of it. That's my favorite part of your answer.
I think that I think you're going to be back to your original question. Why do you end up in the place where you end up in order to teach the gospel to people who want to drink from the fire hose? Drinking from the fire hose is hard. Like one of my parishioners said, "Pastor, I got to tell you, man, it's like your Bible class is like drinking from the fire hose, and I feel like I drown sometimes." It's like, and so what we can do is we can be the pastors that the Lord has given us to be in the places where He's given us to be, and teach the gospel to those folks. And when the Lord gives us an opportunity to make a confession other places, it's fine. This whole thing's been a real learning experience from picking fights in order for my own selfish gain, to thinking that I needed to sort of confess the faith, again, to save myself, to reaching the point where, is this going to solve the issue or is it going to exasperate it?
Right.
And wise words of wisdom is that not everything needs to be responded to. Some of it can. And the great thing about being a free man is you can respond if you want, and you don't. But sometimes
letting go of that's hard, man. That was hard for me too with YouTube and comments on YouTube and random people, like not Missouri Synod, random people leaving comments and like this urge to like somehow like respond. And sometimes I will, but to finally like let go of the, I don't care what they just said. Like that was the most asinine thing ever written by somebody who doesn't know me at all. I got called. This happened. It's like last week. It was like, how can you possibly support Roman Catholicism? And that was it. That was the whole comment, right? And I just wrote back like, I really don't and never have. And she said, I'm sorry, I saw the caller and I thought for sure you were supporting Roman Catholicism.
Right. Why,
but you can.
I got one of those too. Why are you dressed like a Roman priest?
You can ignore it too. And but you're touching on something more important than just the comments. You're touching on that crazy bravery that having a brush with the gospel and death in real life can really unleash. Nothing more dangerous than a Christian who doesn't care what the world thinks. And I'm like in the last year of my life finding this in ways I haven't before, and I'm loving it. Yeah, it sounds like you've found it a little ahead of me, but you've shared it and you've shared it well, and it's something that the podcast increasingly now is starting to try to push and say. What would happen? What would happen if more of us who are Lutherans just cared a lot less about maintaining anything and instead doing what today needs, and understanding that to always be for the sake of saying he has risen to somebody, right? Of all those fast hit questions, the only one I can remember is, do you have a favorite fiction book? It's like out of left field.
Oh, gee.
They're fun. It's like 20 of them, and they're all like those kind of turns from one to each other. If you can get that one, that'll be our closing question.
Goodness. Do I have a... It's been a long time because if I have... I do a lot of theological stuff, and I always sort of... I think I've been more... my reading is all sort of theological, and I will... Netflix, Hulu, all of it, it's all sort of in there.
So give me your favorite recent Netflix, Hulu, whatever story. Favorite story. Fiction story. I could always get in trouble with. There was Game of Thrones before the last season. That just went south. I haven't seen the last 2 seasons.
Yeah, it's okay. You're all right.
I want to. I love the story.
I like Daredevil on Netflix. I love that.
Okay.
I like to watch the DC CW shows. I love those. Even though it's becoming harder and harder to watch things because it's a culture's being pushed down on us.
DC
CW. So like Flash and Arrow. Arrow's getting harder.
Why do you like Daredevil so much?
He's a different character. He's a different sort of superhero. I think they really did a really good job. I was bummed that they canceled it.
Yeah. Right.
Let's see. I like the things that are wholly different. I don't really like to this is awful, but I love sports.
Sure.
But my when I'm off, I'm off. And like I went to a baseball game with a buddy of mine. We used to go to different ballparks, and we had one day off, and he wanted to go to Noah's Ark, and I was like, dude, vacation, nothing, please. And he's like, my pastor's saying this. So like when I'm off, I'm off, and it's I love the whole Marvel universe. I'm looking forward to that sort of thing. Yeah. I don't like the folks that sort of judge what we're watching and what we're not watching, the sort of purity police. So I'm sure that'll be awesome. But
I don't know how many of them will find this unless they find it just because I'm interviewing you.
The shelf life on most of the stuff it's like 2 seasons and then it goes south.
Yeah, I know.
So
no one can finish a story. They can start stories, they can't finish them.
You got it, buddy. You got that's like really, really well. They run out of new ideas. They burn it and.
Well, there's a lot of recycling going on anyway, but that's okay because all storytelling is recycling at the end of the day. I think
we're getting old. That we tell our kids. I know the plot on this already because we've seen it before.
I think it's the postmodern conundrum of having no meaning, and so you either just have to end in death and darkness, nihilism, which makes for just really bad TV, or you have to get weirdly political and try to start making a point, or you just, but what they don't do enough, although Marvel's been pretty good at this early on, is redemption stories. And Marvel's done a lot, and even Iron Man in the most recent one. I mean, that he is a full. If you watch first Iron Man until Avengers 4, and you look at who Tony was and who he is, I mean, I love Cap. Cap's my favorite because I want to be Cap, but I am Tony, and it's not because I'm cool and a multimillionaire, right? It's because I'm that guy who didn't see anybody else but himself, who now. I will die for what I believe truth is, and which is helping others for Tony. Right?
For now, I'm Chubby Thor.
That's good. Oh, that was so disappointing. Oh, man. I like Thor too, but man, dude, that was sad. That was just sad.
I think that I'm still a little bit. We're always trying to find law. Now you've just identified some place of the law that's still in my place. Heinz, a friend of mine, just told me that he didn't read fiction for the longest time because he thought that if he was reading, he should be reading theology. And I think you've just liberated me from another one of the laws.
No, I mean, I have always tried to read fiction before bed. This goes pre Christianity, whatever. But there's so much to learn from fiction. It's theological. When you have a worldview built on your theology. And it can be good or bad. Well, Game of Thrones, I mean, what I love about Game of Thrones is it has a more honest anthropology than just about anything I've ever seen produced in video ever, right? Those are real humans. And that's why it's so awful. Because they're doing and thinking and acting like real humans do. And even the good guys are messed up. Whether it pushes an agenda, I don't care as much. I know that when what's his name? Not Cersei, but her brother. When Lannister, Goldman, whatever.
Slayer.
When he ends up protecting this woman who is not a woman, right? She's got all these issues, and he hates her, and he's a womanizer. But when he suddenly has this crisis of conscience, and can't harm her because she's helped him. I mean, this. You don't get that with a cookie cutter character who's been good up to this point. And I don't know. So I love it. You get that in good fiction books.
My hobbies pertain to like I love astronomy. I love science. I love space.
That's cool.
I love so my Real Clear Science and stuff like that, and space.com are my go-tos during the course of the day when I'm not doing sports and stuff like that. So I love the fact that this stuff is just crazy. I absolutely am. I went to the Chicago Observatory in Wisconsin when I was up here, and this big giant telescope, dude. Have you ever been to one of those? So this big giant telescope, and so they're going to show us Saturn. There's like 20 geeks there and me, and they're going to show us Saturn, and I'm like, booyah! Here we go, and it's this big. You know what I mean? And like that's less than an inch. You know what I mean? It's like, and you can see its rings. It's kind of blurry, and I'm like, that's it. And they're like, well, can you see its moons? I see specks of dust around it. But when you sort of contemplate the massiveness of this universe and how sort of small we are in it, that's the sort of thing I love. I love those splies. I love messing with my Mac and taking my Mac apart. I'm going to do a Hackintosh. I've already done a little Hackintosh. Really? Yeah, my Hackintosh is... my Mac is this cheese grater, 2009 version.
Wow.
This is not, you shouldn't do this. But it's a 2009 that's like flashed to be 2012. And all the innards are sort of different, and it outperforms the trash can and the iMac.
Really?
Yeah, that's super cool. It was a very big hobby for a while, finding the Bluetooth so that continuance.
Yeah.
So those are my hobbies.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's a little more geeky than I appear.
No, that's great.
Those are my things. So I like that my Mac is like this like my congregation laughed at me like the 90s called and they want your Mac, and I'm like, this baby outperforms all the stuff, and maybe not the new Mac Pro, but it's it's got a new AMD.
Yeah, we can just talk Mac at some point too.
Anytime you want to talk Mac, I'd love to talk.
I'm not ready to hack mine yet, but
well, that's because it's just a crazy deal.
The ups and downs of being a Mac guy.
But it's not a true Hackintosh because it's internal or it's external is actually Mac. The true Hackintosh, which I'm not quite there yet. I'm starting to get bold enough for it. Saving the pennies, nickels, and dimes to do it is PC parts and then tricked into
iOS.
Being right.
Yeah, I've looked into that, not so much for that, but for having like a virtual Mac on the PC. But way out of my pay grade. So, George, thank you.
Hey, anytime, dude. It was fun.
Really enjoyed this, and
2 hours.
Yeah,
I feel sorry for your listeners.
No. I've had 3 to 3.5 ones at times.
Really?
So, yeah.
I feel like I'll let you.
No. This is good. This is good. They listen long form. They listen in chunks, and they know sometimes it's an hour, sometimes it's more. But thank you for the work you do. Thank you for the repentance you have shared. That's a huge thing. Thank you for your love for the gospel.
Can we do a shameless plug for Higher Things?
I'm getting there.
I'm sorry.
I'm getting there. Your love for the gospel, and I'll throw it like this. And thank you for teaching hymns to the kids. I may have told you this, I may not. I'm sure you get it from others. But we brought a big group from North Dakota to Bozeman. It was the first time like North Dakota had ever had Higher Things. It was Matt Richard did a lot of it, but I was part of that as well. And they've got a big group here now. North Dakota has continued to move in this direction. And one of the neat things we did was we went. Was it Bozeman? It was Fort Collins. We went whitewater rafting when we were there, and that was the one where they had the big soccer balls that you could run into. There was all this cool stuff. Kids had a phenomenal time. We stayed at the YMCA of the Rockies like the night before, and it was up in the mountains, all this amazing stuff. And we gave them a survey. We got back. It's like 70 youth, right? Here's a survey. What'd you think of this? And they rated everything, and they had to write in what they wanted and rate everything. And the soccer balls, whatever, came in number 2, right? And rafting was down like 5 or something. And then the hymns was number 1. Mm-hmm. And anybody who ever complains to me about Higher Things, that's what I tell them. It's like, you know what? Some pastor can show up and do a breakout and be a real obnoxious punk and say something really stupid. But he's a pastor. He's on the roster, and he's bringing his kids to the youth event. And so we let him teach every week in a pulpit. So I don't care. My kids got there. They're going to ask me about it, and then I'm going to teach them about how the guy's a nincompoop. I'm going to teach them about how he's not saying what he should be saying. But year in and year out, I come here and I do not fear the worship. And I can't say that about other organizations or events put on for youth, whether they be large or small. I can't say that. So thank you for that. To me, that is huge. Absolutely huge.
So we think the best way for kids to be raised to be Lutheran or Christians that believe that salvation is by grace through faith in Jesus Christ is to put that gospel into their ears, to put those hymns into their ears, and put that worship into their ears. And catechesis. And so it's a fun organization. Higherthings.org, dude. It's better when you sell it than I sell it. So
well, no, I should have asked, because I should ask this way too. And people who want to find what George is doing, where do they look for your most interesting stuff? I know you do some radio for Higher Things. I don't know where do they find you? They follow you on Twitter. They want to ping you. They want to yell at you. Where do they go?
They want to yell at me. Higherthings.org is where all our stuff is. We do have a YouTube channel and a Facebook page and all that jazz. I think we have Twitter and Instagram and all that. Higherthings.org. That's the portal. Yeah. You can look us up on YouTube. There's all sorts of videos and stuff like that there. And we do have podcasts and the like. All of it is to deliver the faith to the next generation without sort of reservation and for the comfort of troubled consciences. There it is. Law and gospel, if you're scoring at home, and it'll be a gift. So. And this is what I love about this. It's not to replace you as a pastor. All right. So much youth ministry is like is designed to sort of make you irrelevant, me irrelevant, because there's somebody cooler than us. I don't think there's a lot of people cooler than you. But they're, like me, it's easy. Chubby Thor. So what we do at Higher Things is simply to reinforce what's going on. That's what we're doing.
Yeah.
So that the same stuff that's going on in your parish is going to go on here. The same catechesis that's going to go on in your parish is going on in here.
This is so cool. So I taught a hymn every month for like the last 6 months in Bible study. We don't have Sunday school. We have a family Bible study. We have about 50 people in it, and we have kids everywhere from like age 5 or 6 up to high school kids. And so I was like, okay, well, we're just going to teach a hymn the first 10 minutes of Bible study, 15 minutes. And my head elder wanted us to learn a particular hymn. And it's not an easy hymn to learn. It's pretty tough. It's Irish. And so we worked at it for a month. This is about three months ago now. And then we sang it for, we used it, maybe 5 months ago. We did baptism for Lent, so we used it a lot during that time. I just couldn't smile big enough when, after Built on the Rock as the opening hymn for the conference, which has also been our transition hymn as we've dealt with leaving a building, a legacy building behind. Built on the Rock's been our hymn. It's going to be our theme for the whole coming year. But that the next hymn that we sang was I Bind It to Myself Today. And that my kids who had just spent a month learning this came here and it's like right there. And then the whole place just booze with it. And they go right into it.
St. Patrick's breastplate.
Yeah.
Right.
So good.
It's
so good.
It's the hymns of the church. I like that my congregation's learning some Luther hymns. They had a small hymn book, and they know me well enough to know that I could stop a hymn at any time and go, okay, stop it, you're not singing. Come on.
Yeah.
You think that you're not going to sing, I'm not going to pick this hymn again. I promise you, it's just going to come back over and over again. And the first communion hymn was, we all believe in one true God.
Yes.
And they just my congregation just destroyed it. Yeah. And here are my youth taking out their phones and recording it so that people sing this hymn.
Yes.
Lutherans sing this hymn. You
hymn.
sang this hymn when you were younger. So you're going to sing this hymn again. Anyway, higherthings.org, check it out.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, dude, for having me. That's great.
Thank you.
Was that worth $1? What about 5? Click the Patreon link in the show notes to sign up. Pretty please?